So I have pressed record finally, and now, with that being said, I do want to go ahead and say OBS has been the most finicky thing. I had tried switching over to Windows 11 because I'm running a laptop, and Dell and all of them fine people make it to where you have to flash new firmware, BIOS, all that stuff. You need Windows utilities. Thank you. In your infinite glory, Dell. You're fantastic.
Yeah.
But so Windows 11 was terrible in some ways. It worked in a lot of ways, but it was very terrible. My microphone quality got destroyed, and OBS is a terrible experience on Windows 11. It is terrible. But I went back over to Fedora. I've been using Fedora, and then I did switch over to Arch a little bit yesterday. Played around with it for a little bit. OBS, I don't know if you're experiencing these same issues, but OBS has been just finicky. Like I don't know, like it will, sometimes images will show up without, I have PNGs and they'll show up just as black JPEGs with no alpha transparency. But then if I reload them again, pop in, work fine. I have no idea.
I haven't noticed that problem because I don't do anything. I have scenes that involve PNGs, but I haven't noticed that. The one thing is there was an update to OBS, I guess about, 3-4 weeks ago, where now every time I open OBS, I get an error message as soon as I open it saying some Stinger MP3 file, some audio file, probably for some transition, doesn't exist on the system anymore. I never used any kind of Stinger transition thing, so it was something that was probably built into a previous version of OBS that they've removed since then or moved it somewhere else. So now it always gives me an error message as soon as I open OBS. It doesn't actually affect anything. I just close the window and keep going, but I have noticed that.
Well, so I guess we'll go ahead and do the intro for this podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is episode 2 of the Linux Crew. We are joined by DT. Obviously, I feel like people should know you if you're interested in Linux. So DT, I do have a question for you. You don't like proprietary stuff, and I am interested to see, have you seen any of the stuff that's going on with like Unreal Engine and all the metahuman stuff?
I have not.
My buddy came over, he's got a PS5, and funnily enough, he came over to my house not because the PS5 is amazing and to show it to me, but because he bricked it. Just doing a software update.
Right.
So he had to come over and have some good Wi-Fi to download all his games. But he came over and he showed me there's a new game made with Unreal Engine 5, and it's called The Matrix Awakens. And it has Keanu Reeves, the woman who plays Trinity and everything from the original movies. And they're talking about how, in The Matrix, they wanted to highlight the fact that there's a chance that technology will hit this point where you can't tell a simulation from reality. And the entire time Keanu Reeves is talking about this, it's his metahuman. It's not a CGI version of him, nothing, completely computer made. And it looks so unbelievably real. You can't even tell that Keanu Reeves is in one scene of it, and it's like him in a mirror talking, but you can't even tell it's him. Like, almost at all, like maybe the creases in his metahuman's eyes are like little fake. That's about it.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem is there's always going to be little things that a computer can never really mimic. Just human behavior, human emotion mainly is the problem. We have this problem where, for the last 40-50 years, people have been trying to replace actual human musicians with synthesized sounds and drum tracks and all that garbage. That's why modern music sounds so bad. Many people like older music where it was actually a real person playing the guitar and the drums, and the reason is it just sounds better. It's because computers can't really mimic emotion. They have no feeling, they have no soul. And it's hard to, you can't really program that into something, right?
It's hard for a lot of people to understand, but you can make a great sound with a computer. That computer does not know how to put those sounds together.
There's a difference between making a sound and making music. As a person that's got a couple of music degrees and spent a lot of my life performing music, it's very different, just telling a computer or a instrument to play something and then actually making it musical. Like if I play a piece of music and I'm really feeling it, I'll push the tempo a little bit, I'll slow down, I'll get louder, get softer at certain moments. I'll do these really musical things, really subtle things that you as the listener don't even pick up. You're moved by what I'm doing, but you don't really understand exactly what I'm doing with that a computer can't do.
Yeah,
because a computer can't feel like, hey, this needs to push forward, this needs to slow down, this needs to be louder, this needs to be softer, this needs to be macho masculine, this needs to be soft and feminine. A computer can't think like that, not the way a human can.
Yeah.
Because we base all that off a feeling, where computers just crunching numbers.
And to me, I think it's very weird that people would even want to remove the human element from music and art. Like,
it's strange, yeah, because it would be different if it actually, approached like the level of a actual human being playing something, but it never does.
Yeah.
I've never heard anything synthesized that sounded as good as a real person playing that instrument.
I definitely understand the tech mindset of like, well, we have advanced technology, let's see what we can do with it. Yeah. I understand that, but the whole mindset of like, because we could do this, we should, doesn't really make any sense. Like, I understand, like, if you wanted to make something that's like a tech demo, like this is what you can do, creating music on a computer, that makes sense. But when you want to go, okay, now your computer can make the song entirely for, like, it's the same thing as like AIs having conversations back and forth with each other. They're creepy as hell. Like, they're definitely like semi-human back and forth, but the actual human element, everything that makes it interesting and real dialogue, is removed, and it's hollow. It's almost like really kind of creepy when you start reading them. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen it. There's a Reddit thread where it's all bots talking back and forth to each other. It's the weirdest thing to read.
I haven't seen that, but I've seen some other social media sites. Well, I mean, every social media site is overrun by bots, but sometimes, I've seen bots respond to other bots. Yeah, it's
weird.
Yeah, it's strange.
So I do have the question of, because I feel like a lot of people are like me and would definitely want to ask you this. So since you have moved to working primarily at your office, you do have a home computer now.
I do. When I first moved into this office, I did not have a home computer for 3 months. So everything I wanted to do that involved a computer had to be done here.
Is it nicer having a home computer, or did you actually prefer not having one and needing to go into the office?
Well, the first couple of weeks, it was a little weird because you're used to just being able to jump on a computer and do anything all the time, But after a while, I kind of liked it because I would just come up here for a few hours, do what I needed to do, go home. I didn't have to worry about anything. Didn't have to worry about checking emails, social media sites, what's going on my GitLab. Hey, I don't have a home computer. That's my excuse. I can't look at any of that stuff. And it was actually nice. I was a happier person.
I'm very jealous.
Well, a lot of people, and I know a lot of people talk about this with like Twitter notifications, where their phone's blowing up constantly and they feel like they have to check it all the time. And that's the same thing, just have a separation where, hey, for these couple of hours a day, I'll turn all that stuff on. I'll read my emails. I'll check my notifications. But once I've done for that little block of time during the day, that day, turn it off. And the rest of the day, hey, whatever's you get messaged or emailed, that'll be for tomorrow, right? Yeah. It doesn't need to be a 24-hour-a-day thing. You don't need to be constantly bombarded with all that garbage.
Especially when it comes to Twitter stuff. I am so happy I'm not on Twitter or Facebook.
Because most emails, most social media notifications, most of it is not important. Most of it doesn't even require a response. Most of it doesn't even require you to read it. Now, let's be honest. Most of it, you really shouldn't even be reading it because it's that bad.
You wouldn't miss out on anything.
Right.
My poor dog just woke up. Apparently, he was barking at something in his dream.
But well, yeah, when I first, went without a computer at home, I did miss it because I'd always had it before. But then once I weaned myself off of having a computer around me all the time, I loved the fact that I didn't have a computer.
Mhm.
And then after 3 months, when I finally got one at home, I kind of thought, I really don't need this thing. But I plugged it up. It's there. But it did change some of my computing habits as far as I still don't do as much on that home computer that I have now than I did before.
Awesome, because that was going to be my next
Yeah.
question, like if those habits stuck. Like,
They did because I've gotten to the point where still, when I'm at home, I ignore all emails, all messages. It's, when I'm here, and I'm not recording, of course, because if I'm recording, I can't respond to anything. But when I'm in the office, yeah, I'll respond to that stuff. But when I'm at home, hey, that's my time.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at any of that.
So then I guess the next question would be, what do you actually so if you're not using the computer, you're at home, you don't have anything to do, what are like some of your favorite things to do?
On the computer specifically?
No, like if you're not using the computer, well, like what do you like to do? Do you like garden or stuff outside?
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't spend a lot of time outdoors these days, but I do like to hunt. I do like to fish. This time of year, especially it's hunting season. We had duck hunting season, deer hunting season's going on right now.
Yep, my grandfather's having fun.
Yeah, and you can fish all year round, right? I like fishing. Yeah, so I do like doing some outdoorsy stuff. Sometimes I just like hanging out in the woods. I mean, I don't go out there necessarily to hunt or fish, but sometimes, yeah, I do just walk around.
Go on a hike.
Yeah, I just like being outdoors. But some of the other things I do as far as hobbies, I like working out. So I go to the gym, 4 or 5 times a week for, hour and a half, 2 hours when I go. Like walking.
Well,
As far
at
as
least you're staying
just
in shape.
Well, as far as just those are things to decompress, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. When you're outdoors or you go for a walk or you go to the gym to work out, that's just a way to, hey, take some stress off your mind, right? Because you're not really thinking about anything, right? You just kind of.
I mean, there's so many people who I don't understand the way that a lot of people look at exercise. It's like it's just some chore. It's like, do you understand? Like, you when you don't exercise, and again, I'm not saying like go to the gym, lift weights for like 4 hours, come home exhausted. Like that's not what I'm saying. But like go out and get some healthy exercise, do something physical. It gets that
Yeah.
blood flowing. You
Well,
feel
I mean,
better.
most people wouldn't have to work out even as much as I do. I'm, 44 years old, and when I started working out, I wasn't in great shape. I had some back issues, and I was just in pretty bad shape. So I was trying to get into better shape, and it's tougher. When you're 40 years old, it's really tough to go to the gym and see any kind of real gains as far as weight loss or putting on muscle mass, things like that. When you're 20, man, it's so easy.
I
Like
mean,
that's what I try to tell. Yeah. Well, what I try to tell young people is like, you see these young people that are in their 20s and that, man, I wish I could lose weight because I'm fat, I'm out of shape. And it's like, well, it's so easy because you could just go to the gym and get something done so much quicker than I could. I have to work 5 times as hard, now to do what these people in their 20s could do. So if they just start now, they would see such gains.
Yep. Because I mean, like, I feel real hard for the people who like you when you don't build up like any strength at all, and then you start going out and working out more. When you don't have the strength and you have pain in your back, the back is the worst, but I know knees is also really bad. But when you have pain in those areas, you have to build up that muscle strength to support those areas, and so it's not only is it more difficult to see gains, you also have to deal with the pain to get there. And that's so much worse. It just makes it so much more difficult and so much more of a struggle to make it even like a basic habit. DT, your camera is loading right now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened.
Well, as I was saying, that is Discord for you, and it is definitely.
Well, it's looked like it might have been a networking issue because I froze, you froze, and then I could not join the stream for a minute.
Yeah,
But
I
then,
saw you kept trying to connect, but it just wouldn't load.
and then I checked, I opened a terminal, did a ping of Google, and it's like, well, networking's working here, which my internet's pretty good here. But I checked it just in case. I don't know what that was. I guess that was on Discord's end. It was very strange.
Discord has, I pretty much had like a meltdown the other night where someone was like, Discord's not that bad and everything. And I was like I pulled my microphone down close to me. I'm like, no, it is terrible. There's a lot of features, especially on the Linux version that there is, as someone who has recently tried the Windows version, there is 15 features that are just completely non-existent on the Linux version, and it's clearly Discord does not give two craps about this about Linux. And
well, I probably wouldn't choose Discord to record a video call. If you wanted something that was proprietary software and actually good, Zoom is a much better product. If you wanted free software, Jitsi is also a much better product.
The problem is I refuse to use Zoom. I will not use Zoom. That is just it is, to me, that is just as bad as using Skype. Nope, I'll pass. But
Skype.
I've tried Jitsi, and Jitsi, when it works, it is so damn good. But when that issue there, Discord, you can resolve an issue. I've had Jitsi where it took me 45 minutes to or not me, but someone else to reconnect to a call. But that being said, Jitsi is because Jitsi has not got as much crap and cruft going on with it that Discord does. Yeah, it's normally better.
Yeah, because that's all I've ever used on if I had to record a video call, is either Zoom or Jitsi, and I've never had a call go down because of the Zoom servers, for example. That never happens. Where Discord, I've heard a lot of people complain about the quality of what goes on in a Discord call.
Yep. Yeah. And that's kind of why Discord asks you every single call. It's like, hey, did this go well?
Yeah. And the one problem with Zoom, and a little bit of the problem with Jitsi, it's not necessarily once you're on the call, everything goes fine. It's getting into the call, because Zoom has this weird habit where it never picks the right input devices. It's always going to pick the wrong microphone.
See, the thing about Zoom that cracks me up the most is because my mom, she works in medical billing, and all the stuff that they do is tied into Microsoft. I mean, they use Teams, Zoom, all that stuff. And the best thing ever is when they have meetings, big, department meetings, everybody has to join in. And there's always 3 people who don't have their mics muted. And she's like, the amount of stuff that I have heard on a Zoom call where people think that they're muted, she goes, it is insane. I have literally been on her phone calls before, walked through the house, burped, and then heard a whole bunch of women laughing because my mom didn't know she was on mute. I'm like, God, y'all.
Well, I believe both Zoom and Jitsi, I believe, have a feature where everyone's auto muted unless you specifically unmute yourself to talk. That way nobody's accidentally not muted, right? If you want to talk, you got to unmute yourself.
Yep.
Right.
That's my point. Everyone's in these calls should be muted, but they just unmute.
They probably haven't figured out that feature yet. Is the problem? Yeah. Because I don't think it's a default. I think it's something you got to set.
But when it comes to using proprietary software, I do want to have a kind of roundabout conversation. Do you think that there is a good place for, I don't really see anyone doing this, and I think it would be very interesting, taking proprietary software, stuff that we're not, obviously in the FOSS space, interested in. But taking the tools and the things that you can do with those tools and trying to make stuff with those for specifically Linux. I I think there's a lot of room for people who want to go in and do something, just because we were talking about it, like Unreal Engine 5, where you technically can develop on Linux with it, but it is a much more complicated thing to set up. You have a lot of problems that you can run into. It's um, it's just not built to be developed in Linux. But you can take Unreal Engine, the game engine, and develop something FOSS in it for the Linux community. I think we need to start seeing a lot more of that. Like, just that's my opinion. I think if we took stuff that is not meant to be used for FOSS and start making bigger FOSS projects with it, I'm not saying that that's going to help FOSS projects at all, but I think it will start making those proprietary companies um, open their minds a little bit more.
It's weird because, like, I would agree that it would be great if all of the big proprietary software that people love to use, like Microsoft Office, the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite, and all that stuff. I wish it all had native Linux clients, because that would solve a lot of problems with people moving to Linux. But at the same time, that's not something that the community can do anything about. Like, the free and open source software community can't make proprietary software work on Linux, right?
Yeah.
The proprietor of the proprietary software has to make that work on Linux. And in Microsoft's case, they're doing okay. Most of their stuff, like we talked about Skype and Teams, they have native Linux clients. And that's just happened in the last couple of years, with Teams especially. You know, Microsoft made that happen because they see value in Linux. Adobe sees absolutely no point of Linux. They don't, to them, Linux might as well not exist. They don't care. And there's nothing we can do about that as a community. That's the same thing with your gaming engines or whatever it happens to be. If the company behind that doesn't see value in it, they're not going to do it. And there's nothing really we can do, because it's all about dollars and cents, right? Can they make money off of it? If they can, they'll do it. If they can't, it doesn't make sense to them as a company.
Yeah. I think me and Matt touched on this pretty well in our last podcast, but if you, inside of the Linux space, like, I think there is definitely money to be made. I think the reason why a lot of companies look at FOSS projects and see it as something that's just not worth their time. Tell me if you agree on this, but almost 90% of FOSS projects, they do accept donations, but they pick one certain way, one weird ass way of accepting payment and nothing else.
Yeah. And I've had conversations with at least 2 lead devs of Linux distributions where I specifically told them why they couldn't raise enough money to fund their development, because I had a conversation with a couple of different distributions about why they struggled raising money, and it was causing problems. They might have to abandon their distribution at some point. And it's like, do you have a PayPal account? Is there a PayPal link on your website? What's PayPal, basically? No, they didn't say that, but it's like, do you have Patreon? Because pretty much everybody that likes to donate monthly to various things, they have a Patreon account. No, I don't know anything about Patreon. Here's the problem with the free and open source software community and Linux devs, and most of these guys are strictly programmers. All they know is code, right? They don't know community engagement. They don't know how to raise funds. They don't know any kind of business aspects to anything, right? All they know is, I can program, I'm going to write something, people are going to love it. And then when they realize, okay, I need to make money out of this to fund me spending all this time working on this, they have no idea how to go about it.
Yep.
And most of them, my very first thing is, it's so simple. Make sure people can donate monthly on Patreon. Make sure you have a PayPal link as well, so people can send you one-time donations or even subscribe through PayPal as well. And so that covers most people around the world. Now, there are places around the world that can't use either PayPal or Patreon, but at least in most first world countries, that's got you covered, which is mostly where your donations are going to come from anyway. Yeah.
Yep. And like me and Matt were talking about, like just in case anyone who is a Linux developer, which hopefully one is listening to this, look, please make sure when you are trying to raise money, every possible revenue stream that is out there, you are trying to do it. LibrePay, everything. Because it's not going to hurt you. Like whatever time comes out of development, whether it be 24 hours or 48, if that means for the next 2 years you have as many chances as possible of bringing in revenue, please do it. Like, please.
But I've seen this on some very popular Linux distributions that weren't asking for donations, or at least not asking it in a proper way. Like, hey, set up a Patreon page. They set up a Patreon page, and within a couple of weeks, of them setting that up and announcing it, they've got a few hundred to even a few $1,000s worth of donations almost immediately, because people were willing to give them that money. In many cases, people wanted to give them that money forever. There was just no way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, there was just no way.
Or the way they were going about it is just too difficult. Like, I mean, if I want, like, the weird idea is being like, I love your, like, don't make me work to give you money because I like what you do. Like, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of me giving you the money. If I have to spend 25 minutes setting up some account for a service that I'm probably never going to use anywhere else, come on. No.
Exactly. But, and I remember a couple of years, was it 2-3 years ago, the lead dev of Slackware was having some, I think, health issues. And he's pretty much all there is to Slackware. I mean, there's other people that help develop Slackware, but without Patrick Volkerding, Slackware pretty much doesn't exist. And it's still the oldest active Linux distribution on the planet. It's important, right? And he's like, well, he works on it full time, but he really doesn't make any money. He's got medical bills. He may just have to quit and get a real job and quit working on Slackware. I was like, well, have you asked for donations? I mean, you go to the Slackware website. For one thing, it looks like it was written in 1995.
Yep.
And there were been times where Slackware went without a website because they didn't pay the hosting or things went down. And they're like, well, nobody who uses Slackware even uses the web anyway, because we're old school. Well, we don't even need a website. If they want the ISO, they can FTP, and get it through a download. But you go to their website and forever, there was no way to even give them money. It's like, man, set up Patreon. Set up PayPal.
It's like, of course you're not getting money. Like,
yeah. And I know I did a video about it at the time because I was trying to get people aware. And yeah, they set up a Patreon and you got, I don't know, a couple of $1,000 a month, like immediately pledged to him. And it's like, hey, that's all you ever had to do. Exactly. But again, many of these people, when they get into this stuff, they're not thinking that, especially at the beginning. All they want to do is code. I just want to code, man.
We all support that too, because that's what the Linux distribution or whatever you're making needs.
A lot of these big projects, once you have at least more than a handful of people involved in the development, you really need somebody for community management and somebody that actually can go out there and drum up support for you. Because obviously, if you're one of those people that only care about coding, you're not going to do that. Even if you did do that, you probably wouldn't be any good at it, because you're probably one of these introverted people, like so many programmers are, right? You need somebody out going, hey, look, this project needs your help. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's what we want to do in the future. We need this kind of money to make it happen. You've got this Patreon page. Go subscribe. People will go subscribe.
I don't know if it would happen, but I think that the Linux community could definitely benefit from a group of people who their day jobs are marketing, getting together and just becoming like the marketing group for many different Linux projects. And
the problem, I mean, big corporations have people that market, Red Hat and Canonical and SUSE and Oracle, big companies that are involved in Linux or free and open source software in general. They have people in a marketing department. But like smaller community kind of projects, they typically don't even think about marketing.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and that's got to change.
Yeah.
especially once you get to like I mentioned on a video a couple of weeks back that GIMP was struggling for support because GIMP has like 3 or 4 people that work on it. Really, GIMP has like 2 people that put in a ton of work on GIMP and make this fantastic piece of software, right? They've been, putting on all this work for years, and they don't really make any money. And when they ask for money, they don't get much money, because again, they not really marketing it properly.
Yep.
And it shouldn't be the case. The people that develop a piece of software like GIMP, for example, should be paid enough to work on that full time.
Yeah.
Like we, the free and open source software community, we need to make sure projects like GIMP and other big projects, OBS, Kdenlive, things like that require somebody that's a full-time developer working on that thing, maybe multiple full-time developers working on that thing. We need to fund it. Yeah. And in many cases, when you ask the community and people that use these kinds of pieces of software, they're willing to fund it, but they have to have a way. There has to be a way for us to do that. And
that's the crazy thing to me is that you would ever to me, that video was great because it was shattering to find out that GIMP is under supported. A universal project that every person in the Linux community uses at some point. Finding it, and especially when GIMP is competing with the likes of Photoshop, how is it underfunded and still keeping up? That's
because GIMP is really one of the shining examples of free and open source software. As far, a lot of free and open source software, I'll use it, warts and all, even though it's got some, Kdenlive is a perfect example. Kdenlive is a complete crash fest sometimes. It's just crash-tastic, right? Mm-hmm. But I'll use it because it's the best free and open source editor, because all the others are pretty bad too. Yep. But I won't use a proprietary video editor when a free and open source software video editor works, and Kdenlive does work. But GIMP's different. GIMP really doesn't have that many warts. Like GIMP is a great piece of software. Like if
I genuinely can't think of anything to complain about with GIMP.
If we had Photoshop on Linux, I wouldn't pay for it. Not when GIMP's around. No. I wouldn't want to use that. I want to use GIMP.
Even on Windows, I wouldn't touch that. No, GIMP's just better.
And I'd pay for GIMP. I donate to GIMP. Especially near the end of the year, and I need to remind people about this. As you near the end of every year, more and more of these free and open source software projects are going to ask for donations. Please, try to think now about what you want to give to various projects. For me, I try to always give money to the stuff that helps me do what I need to do. So I always give money to GIMP, the KDE project, mainly because of Kdenlive, OBS, things like that.
Towards the end of the year, it's that holiday season. Yeah. If you got extra money, every project can use it.
I think I'm subscribed to 3 or 4 different Linux distributions, Patreons, even though obviously I don't use them. I don't use them. I use Arco Linux primarily on all of my machines. But in the past, I've been a Patreon member for Elementary. Never run Elementary, but they do such interesting things. They're trying to do something different, and I like that. So I give them money to help fund that, because we need people out there doing something different.
And Elementary does do some great things.
Yeah. I mentioned Slackware earlier. I think I'm still a supporter of their Patreon, have been for a couple of years. I've donated to a bunch of, it varies from month to month, where I try to spread the love, and that's another thing. Yeah. Some people are just like, well, there's so many projects that need my support. I can't subscribe to them all. I only have, $25 a month that is extra income that I feel comfortable donating to these projects. Well, pick 5 of them, donate $5 a month to each of them. And you don't have, it's not like a lifetime commitment. If next month you want to pick a different 5, unsubscribe from those, pick a different 5, give them $5 a month.
You're still helping out.
Just give what you can to who you can.
That's what always cracks me up about people with the argument of well, I don't have enough money to support everybody. It's no one does. Just pick who you're going to support for now, and then you can change stuff later. The whole point is just to give something, because otherwise, if you don't give anything, none of your projects that you like using get any support.
And I tell you, projects that do a good job of marketing and raising funds, you can tell when you use them. Like when we talk about free and open source software, when you open up Blender, I don't know if you're familiar with Blender, if you ever, it looks like it's professionally made by some $1 trillion corporation, right? It's free and open source software, right?
Yep.
Why? That's because they've raised some funds along the way. They actually pay real people to develop this very high level professional piece of software. For those that are not familiar, Blender's for 3D animation, 3D modeling.
And it's a fantastic application. Thank God that they have recently, like in the past few years, gotten a little bit more tunnel visioned with their like path, because I don't know if everybody will remember this, but there was a day when Blender could do everything. There's still like a video editor in Blender.
They wanted to drop the video editor a couple of years ago, and then they decided against it because people were like, yeah, you know what? The video editor was actually pretty good. And it kind of made sense because I edit videos, then I make these 3D animations to insert into my videos. And so they reverse course on that. Because the video editor is actually not bad, actually, in Blender.
It is good. Yeah. It's just if you're going to be doing simplistic, video edits, and you're not constantly making new animations for it, that's when Blender kind of falls apart, because there's just no real reason.
Right.
I am glad
Blender reminds me of Emacs in a lot of ways.
Yes.
When you talk about it does so much, it has that Emacs kind of feel where when you open it up, you literally could do practically anything in it. You could turn any kind of multimedia job you want to do. Basically, you could do it inside this one program.
It's great that they did finally get rid of the game engine though, because that was such like, look, it was cool. You could do a lot of cool stuff in it, but that
was a little bit. Yeah.
So much development time that should have been spent in other areas. That
was really a little outside the scope.
Yeah.
Like I can understand the modeling and the animation and the video editing all kind of go together, but we're going to create games. No, stop it.
Yeah, right. No.
That really, you're trying to tie stuff together now that really doesn't make sense.
Yeah. We already have full game engines. It's fine. But yeah, Blender and GIMP and all of these projects, to me, I think it's one of those things where I'm just glad that they do get support. Blender is one of the few examples where they don't just get community support. They heavily get like industry support.
Well, they are, a real professional piece of software. Like a lot of, especially non-Linux users, the Windows users out. Well, I have to use all this professional software that's only available on Windows. Well, Blender is a legit professional piece of software. Like people that do 3D animation and modeling professionally, they use Blender, right? So
I mean, I've been learning Blender for a while now, and as somebody who is trying to make games and just hone that skill, like Substance Painter and all of the other options that Adobe has, they can do more, but all of the things that are important and all of the things that make something really look good are in Blender. Like there are finite amount of features that are in Adobe and all of those. And I'm not gonna, if you think about all right, for me to give you 10 extra nifty features, they may save you some time, may make your thing look tiny bit better. Would you spend like 20 grand over the course of like 5 years for it? Probably not.
No, another problem with the proprietary versus free software aspect too, when you start talking about investing money, it's not just the money spent, it's the fact that you invest in this one ecosystem, this one piece of proprietary software, and everything you write is in that, or design or whatever it is you're doing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be multimedia, but you invest in this one proprietary piece of software that saves everything in their proprietary format. And then 5 years later, the company decides we're not going to develop that piece of software anymore. or the company just goes bankrupt. And it's a proprietary piece of software. It's licensed under a proprietary license. The only people that can look at that source code and never do anything with that piece of program was that company that no longer exists. Where are you at now?
Yeah. All those project files, gone. You'll never see them again.
Where Blender, being free and open source software, no matter whatever happens to Blender, the source code's still out there. If you had the know-how, or you and a group of people had the willpower, basically, to make that thing go forward, you can keep Blender going forever, you know, in perpetuity. It'll last forever. That's why I often tell people free and open source software never dies. You know, proprietary software has a shelf life.
Yeah, that's the whole thing that cracks me up about people freaking out about Audacity. Let Audacity burn themselves, okay?
Yeah.
Like, all it takes is one fork. You know, we've already got, we already have, I believe there's Audacious or something. I know there's Tenacity, which is good.
Yeah, there's two that see a little bit of development, right? Audacium and Tenacity.
It's Audacium, okay.
Yeah. But if you've been around for a while, I don't get upset when I see some of these free and open source projects die, because I know they don't really die. None of them ever die. I remember OpenOffice and, you know, Sun Microsystems, and then everybody just abandoned OpenOffice. Hey, everybody that contributed to OpenOffice that didn't work for Sun Microsystems went and forked it and started developing LibreOffice. It's like it never missed a beat, right?
Exactly.
OpenOffice died
and
because it's
proprietary.
Yeah. So it's always going to be that way, you know. It's somebody, if Linux, the kernel, all of a sudden was licensed under a proprietary license, some corporation bought it, Microsoft bought the Linux kernel, right? It doesn't matter, because we can fork it. The Linux kernel will still go forward, and we won't miss a beat. It won't be called Linux because we'll have to change the name, but it'll still be essentially Linux. Yeah.
I mean, maybe that'll be the day when, like, Stallman gets his day where it's GNU plus Linux, and it's like, you have to call it that.
No, it's Microsoft plus Linux now. Yeah.
I wonder just how much people, like, understand or don't understand. Like, I respect the hell out of Stallman, but also I will never stop laughing at some of the things that man has said. It is great. I think a lot of people take him and a lot of FOSS advocates a little too seriously. Like, look, all of us in the space, like, we're all, like, every single person is on a spectrum of weird, okay? And the fact that we have very popular, extremely, like, professional people, and then extremely, you know, your weird, awkward people, it's great. We have like, if you think about it, Microsoft doesn't have the, you know, weird, say literally anything that comes to mind, speak clear and openly. That doesn't happen at Microsoft.
Yeah, but again, that would never happen at a company, because a company has to think about shareholders and money, right? No. It's different with the community. We can't say, no, you don't get to speak. Hey, this other person, you get to speak for us. No, everybody has a voice.
Exactly. And it's better that way.
Yeah. I mean, we want it to be that way. That's the whole point of freedom, right?
Yeah.
You may not like people like Richard Stallman when he speaks, and he's kind of, you know, he's got a touch of autism, right? And he's socially awkward. Linus Torvalds obviously sometimes has issues with anger, right? Yeah, these guys are not guys that a company would put out front, right?
Yeah, yeah. They're not a company's PR guy, you know. They're just not.
But you know, it's a community thing, right? I mean, if these guys want to get out and speak, they can speak.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing, like that should be the good part, like
right.
The fact that, like, I don't understand everybody that lets Stallman aggravate them. I'm like, look, if you disagree with him, that's kind of the whole point of the Linux space. The people who you disagree with get to talk just as much as you do. Like, that's kind of the good part.
Well, a lot of the people, well, I won't say everybody, but a lot of the people that have a problem with, like, free software zealots like Stallman, or like myself, because I get these kind of crazy comments, you know, in the YouTube videos sometimes from, you know, people that use proprietary software as man, your views on free software and versus proprietary software, they're sickening. They're extremists. They're divisive. They're toxic. And I was like, I'm just telling you, hey, the benefits of free software versus proprietary software. If you don't care about that argument, or because many people really have no issue with free software, it doesn't make a difference to them. They'll never even be involved in that debate. That's fine.
Yeah.
But why are you worried about the people that do care about it? It's like I have also the same issue when I talk about privacy. Well, why do you care about privacy? You're being listened to all the time. You know, you got all these microphones and cameras around you, your cell phone. When you go out on the streets, you know, street lights have cameras and, you know, you're being watched. It's like, there's no such thing as privacy. So why do you even talk about it? If you don't care about it, that's one thing. I care about it, right? And there's other people that care about it. And I'm talking to the people that care about it. If you don't care about it, there's no argument to be had. I don't want to debate people that don't care about free software or like proprietary software. I'm not interested in changing your mind on that. I'm interested in letting people know that have never heard that message, that there's something else.
Yeah.
You know, that, you know.
And it's something that I feel like a lot of people get very upset about disagreements on opinion. And it's like, it's the same thing as like, if you're talking to me about how much you love Pepper Jack and I just don't like Pepper Jack, like,
oh no,
we're not going to get into a heated argument. And I'm also not going, I'm not going to walk away and be like, screw you, Pepper Jack sucks. Like, we're just gonna, yeah, that's what
if we're talking about the cheese on a Subway sandwich, the American cheese is the best. But
I used to work there. Now I
know that's why I brought it up.
Fresh mozzarella is where it's at now.
Really? Okay.
Yes. If they have it, try it. If they don't, then sad days go with the American. Their
cheddar is just weak. It's not sharp enough. It's anyway.
Trust me when I say we get it from the. I'm sorry, Subway, but I'm just going to go ahead and let it go. Our distributors are very cheap, and we get the.
It does have a plastic kind of look to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't even look like real cheese.
Yeah. And then there's also weird rumors about the Subway tuna, but we won't talk about that.
But yeah, I got you sidetracked. You like Pepper Jack, but I don't. Where were we going with it?
Yeah. So like, if we have a reasonable like argument about just opinion, it's weird because when you take it away from the benign, people suddenly start to get this weird like want to have a fierce argument about something that they don't care about, which is weird. Like if you don't like if you care about proprietary and I don't, why would I want to argue about
well, it's in some ways it's human nature. It shouldn't be human nature. It's actually a character flaw that's unfortunately too prevalent in mainstream society. Is people want to always constantly justify themselves, justify their actions. Like when I say I like to use free and open source software strictly where possible, I don't like using proprietary software. And then, somebody, well, I have to use proprietary software because my job requires this and my university requires that. Okay.
Yeah.
Like literally that has nothing to do with what I just said. I didn't ask you what you were doing at your job. Like, I don't care.
Yeah. Like, and you don't even have a choice in them. Like,
right.
It's the same thing. Like, if I love FOSS, but if I walked up to my sister, she's in college right now. They force her to use Chrome with an extension that like monitors everything that she does. If I walked up to her, you should be using Firefox. Like, she can't. And like, also like, she's not going to come up to me and be like, okay, you need to switch around what you're doing because I have to use Chrome.
But it's just weird because, these people that come up with these arguments where there's not an argument. Like when I have to use Microsoft Office because my job requires it. And what does that have to do with me saying I like free and open source software? Is that like a rebuttal?
Yeah.
Because it makes no sense. I guess you're talking one thing, I'm talking something else.
It's weird because it's like saying, we were talking about Subway. Subway's nice. And then like someone else from like the UK or somewhere goes, well, I don't have a Subway. Like,
Yeah.
well,
Okay.
yeah, like that's a normal comment, but that's not something that you would have an argument over. But yet it's the same, like people will treat it like we need to have an argument when it comes to the FOSS stuff. It's weird. Like I will never understand that need to argue inside of it.
Yeah, another thing other than people needing to justify themselves, I do think there is a not an insignificant portion of the community that does use proprietary software, knows it's evil, but they use it anyway, mainly for convenience, not because they have to. And they know that they could probably use free and open source software in some cases. And it bugs them when they hear somebody like me point it out.
Yeah.
You know, then it makes them feel guilty. And then they have to lash out. Well, I got to use proprietary software. Proprietary software is better, DT, and you just suck, and your mama smells funny, and whatever they leave in the YouTube comments.
I totally understand that, which it's weird. Like me, I use Discord. I don't have to argue or just look, I know Discord is proprietary. I'll say it. It's a piece of shit. Discord sucks.
Yeah, Discord is not a good example of good proprietary software. Like if you're going to use proprietary software because there's no good free alternatives, I understand. But when the proprietary software you're using is bad, then it kind of no longer makes sense.
Exactly. And it's one of those things where like I know what I'm using is bad, but I don't. It's weird. It's like a lot of people, they judge themselves for, like, I use Discord because there are people that I want to talk to who will only use Discord. I could definitely use something else, but out of convenience sake, I use Discord. I don't feel bad about that, but a lot of people do, and that's right. That's a problem. Like, and I don't feel bad about that. You know, the people, you know, I'm a free software zealot, right? I admit it. I'm an extremist, right? I'm sitting here on Discord with you. Why? It's because you asked me to meet you on Discord. What am I going to say? Hey, no, I refuse to use that piece of software. I'm not going to. Somebody invites me somewhere. What am I going to? No, exactly. I refuse. If you don't meet me on Jitsi, I'm not talking to you. Yeah. I'm not going to. It's crazy, but like, I don't understand the people who don't get that. Like, you don't have to judge yourself like that. Like, yeah.
Now, later, when I start a conversation with somebody else, you know, outside of this, I'm going to fire up Jitsi and invite them to my Jitsi instance, you know, but I'm not going to tell you, hey, we shouldn't be on Discord right now because Discord is bad. Mm-hmm.
I think it's also a thing. I think there are a lot of people now who are needing validation from others. And like, you're a big name. You're a big target for people who want validation in what they're doing. And if you're doing something different and your opinion on stuff is different, that I guess it comes off as hurtful to some. Like,
well, I do think it was different when I started making YouTube videos about 4 years ago. The YouTube community, the Linux YouTube community, was a much smaller place. Didn't have nearly as many channels. Not nearly as many people subscribed to that kind of content, watching that kind of content. Linux has grown in popularity, especially on YouTube since then, a lot. The other thing is the Linux YouTubers that were around then, none of them really talked about free and open source software the way I do, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. They're talking about Linux as if it's a Windows replacement. It's just, hey, all your proprietary software, some of it works on Linux. Come run your proprietary programs on Linux. We're not even going to tell you about free and open source software.
Mine's here.
Right. And it's like, no, you're, it's like, I don't understand people that are in the Linux space and want to promote Linux and never give any lip service to the free software movement or open source software movement. Because, yeah, you might get people to try out Linux, but you're setting those people up for a bad time because you're selling them a bag of goods. Like Linux is like your proprietary operating systems like Windows or Mac, and it's a completely different ecosystem. And I think in a lot of ways, people like me and other people in the community that preach free software, open source software, because of that old school mentality where they were trying to make Linux a Windows replacement. Those people don't like us because we're reminding people the truth that Linux is not Windows. It will never be Windows.
No.
It can never be Windows. And that's not just me just trying to be toxic or divisive. I'm just a realist.
Yeah.
Free software can't be proprietary software. It's like I take a coin. It's heads or tails, right? It can't be both. It's either going to be one or the other.
Yeah. And also I feel like we didn't have on YouTube for a long time the people who are the ideologues for FOSS and free software, open source software. We didn't have that at all.
Right.
Like, and as much as people like to hate because the ideologues are the people who will not. They don't budge, and they're hardcore in what they believe.
Yeah. One of my problems with Richard Stallman as being like the face of the free software movement, I understand why he does it, because he's the founder of the movement, and he would get ridiculed anytime he used something that was proprietary in nature. But the fact that there's nobody on these proprietary platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, things like that, talking about free and open source software, well, those are the people that need to hear the message, right? The people on the proprietary platforms. I understand Richard Stallman, he can't do it because he's in a unique position. But somebody like me, people often ask, hey, why are you on YouTube? Well, that's where everybody watches video content.
Exactly.
It's a proprietary platform. Yes, I know. What? Everybody on Odyssey knows about free and open source software. I post videos there, but my message is trying to convert people from proprietary software to open source software doesn't really work on Odyssey. Nope. They know about open source software. That's why they're already on Odyssey. Right? Exactly. The people on YouTube. And that's Stallman. I really wish he did more, specifically on two platforms, because they're so big and it would really help spread the movement. YouTube and Facebook, if Stallman did interviews and videos on those two platforms, it would go a long way. I know why he doesn't do it, but that would be my advice to Richard if I had a one-on-one with him, like a heart-to-heart between me and Daddy Stallman.
Well, the thing about Stallman is like I completely appreciate the perspective of, like, he has to be the ideologue. He has to be that person.
Yeah, he has no choice.
Yeah, like, I mean,
otherwise nobody would take him seriously. Like, if you're the guy that created the, you don't even follow what you preach, right? Well, that doesn't have to be Stallman. He's not a good person to put out front anyway. We've already talked about this, but he needs to have somebody else saying his message on those platforms. It doesn't necessarily have to be him.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, actually, now that you speak about it, I don't know that I've seen pretty much any, like, member of, like, the FSF really active on any of that.
You'll never see any of them. And Richard Stallman, when people interview him, like out in life, like if I got my camera and I see him somewhere at a conference or something, and he agrees to sit down with me for an interview, before I ever turn on the camera, one of the first things Richard always tells people is, you cannot post this to YouTube or Facebook. That's like it's just first two stipulations. If this is going on YouTube or Facebook, I'm not doing the interview.
How do people see your message, man?
Right? What are you doing? We might as well not even talk then.
Like, awesome. So I'll grab this interview for my whole movie collection.
That's great. The 10 people that watch Odyssey, they'll get the message. My followers on DistroTube, my Mastodon instance, they'll love it.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm not going to belittle Odyssey. There are plenty of people on Odyssey, but come on, man. They've all heard your message. Like, that's why they're there.
As far as free and open source software, there's no point doing that there.
Well, man, it has been great talking to you. I'm sure you have got to go, like, do stuff, be active, be productive. I'm sure you've got to do it more than me. Today is probably going to be a lax day for me.
I don't have too much planned for today. At some point, I need to get back into Zero AD because I haven't played in like 2 or 3 weeks. And I don't know. At some point, I need to do some Zero AD video content is what I need to do.
Yes.
Because I see too many people that don't know how to to actually play Zero AD the correct way. Like when I see somebody train 200 archers to go attack a bunch of rams, and I just, and then they wonder why they get killed, and they never. I didn't kill a single unit of that guy's, and he destroyed my whole civilization. Man, train some sword cav, right? Sword cavalry. That's what you.
The best thing ever is just how helpful you are in my Zero AD streams. It's the best. Because there's no one else there. I've gotten one other person who is like a high level Zero AD player to like try and help us out. But the problem is like they're amazing in trying to help. However, I don't think they get the fact that we are just trying to play casual, because they're giving like advanced advice, like
oh yeah, well,
like big chunks of paragraphs, like you need to do this, this, and this, which is
Zero AD is very competitive as far as you get on to the multiplayer stuff.
It is a great game. Just in case anyone has not heard of Zero AD,
yeah.
Please
the problem with Zero AD is because it's free and open source software, but also because it's under active development. They're always improving things. There's a new release like every couple of months, and it's always big changes in the releases. A civilization that used to be overpowered, now it's kind of weak. One of the weaker ones be you used to have elephants for this civilization, now you don't. You used to have siege towers, now you always things are changing. And because of that, when you're new, you have no idea what works against, because there's no documentation. The only way you figure out, for example, that you need swords against rams is from playing the game.
Yep.
The only reason you find out that archers don't work against rams is because you got to play the game and that didn't work, because you can't go to like the Zero AD website and get all of this information. There's no like quick cheat sheet guide. Hey, when you see this, train this unit. When you see this, train this other unit.
And the tutorial can only help so much,
right,
for being honest. But also, because we are talking about Zero AD, before we even get ready to end the stream, in the podcast, if you're going to be downloading Zero AD and you're on a Debian-based distro or Ubuntu, do not just pull it from the repos. It'll be like a year out of date. You can play the game, but
regardless of what distro you're on, as long as you're on a System D distro, I strongly recommend using the Snap package just so you always have the latest up-to-date version.
Yep, and I am heavily against Snap, but I will say the Zero AD Snap is fantastic. And
usually the Snap installs faster than from your package manager, because the Snap servers, they're pretty quick. Because it's a big game. Like when I install it from the apt package manager or from Pacman, it'll take like a 10 or 15 minute download. But the Snap seems to download in like 5 minutes, right? It seems a little peppier.
Yep.
So if you're pressed for time too.
Yeah. And Zero AD also, for anyone who hasn't played it, it will genuinely blow your socks off the first time you open it. Even the Snap, it opens, like you press it or press enter, however you open the program, and it is open within a second. It is a fantastic game in that aspect. The first time I opened up Zero AD, I was like, holy shit, I haven't seen a game do this.
And it's free and open source software, and it's available on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Mm-hmm. And it's another one of those. When earlier we talked about GIMP and Blender, Zero AD is a shining example of what free and open source software gaming can be. Because people talk, well, there can never be, open source games because, you have to have bajillions of dollars behind the games. Well, I don't know. Zero AD is doing pretty good. Yep. They have people that are contributing, obviously, code. All the artwork. I mean, they've got some pretty serious artists
and
that worked on
amazing.
The music, somebody contributed some music for that thing. It's not like mind-blowing music.
It's so good. Splitgate stole it, so
yeah,
it's that good.
Well, actually, the best free and open source software gaming, as far as a soundtrack. Have you ever played the Battle for Westnoth?
Yes, I have.
Mm-hmm. The soundtrack for that is absolutely amazing.
It's incredible.
As a matter of fact, I downloaded the soundtrack just because I wanted and it's almost like a movie soundtrack. It's this big orchestra, cinematic, bombastic soundtrack, and it is incredible that somebody put that together for an open source game, right? Yeah. Somebody did that for free, basically, for an open source game.
Even Zero AD's music, I feel the same way about it. I'm like, it Zero AD, that soundtrack is, it is so unbelievably immersive. Like, it pulls you into the environment. It's so well done. So yeah, if you haven't played Zero AD, I'll try and remember and link to it in the description below so you can go find it. Also, DT's links will be down below on the off chance that you haven't seen any of his videos or aren't subscribed to him. Do it. Got a great channel and he's doing good work. And I try to do the same. But so,
well, you'd be surprised how many people like that are watching your channel have never heard of me.
I don't know.
No, but when you do collaborative stuff with anybody, even if you're kind of in the same space, most people don't subscribe to like a million different channels on one topic.
No.
Hey, I'm interested in Linux. I find this one guy, I watch his videos. They really don't subscribe to like everybody else. So you'd be surprised. You think everybody knows. No, probably most people have never heard of me that are watching you. It's weird, but it's the truth.
We'll find out. We'll find out based off the comments.
Yeah.
But all right, guys, thanks everyone for being here. And I'll throw up the screen now with all the patrons who support me over on Patreon. Thank you, guys. And we will see you in the next episode. Peace.
All right. Take care.